when you're really small, put your product in front of your users as soon as you can, even if it's not ready, even if it's just a prototype actually, but try to put it as soon as you can because you need to get learnings as fast as you can.
Hello, everybody. I'm Sasha, and the fact that I'm Russian has nothing to do with Vladimir being Russian. It's a pure coincidence. And I swear he did not tell me that he was going to give me this like very high pressure introduction. I didn't even know that that webinar was a success. I didn't even see anyone when I was talking in my own camera. So anyway, thanks for being here tonight. I'm really excited to chat with you about some practical tips on building a design culture in your organization. And I typically hate PowerPoints, which is why mine is just a template from Google, even though I'm a designer. I don't have any sparkly tigers, nothing there. But I did, for the fun of it, hide a pretty bad pun in the presentation. So if you see it during the presentation, raise your hand and wave your hand, and you'll get a high five or something. I don't have any prizes, but it's a pretty bad pun. Does everyone know what a pun is? Yeah, it's a game of words. Okay, cool, just checking. All right, so I try to be practical in my presentations just so you can walk away with a clear action plan of what to do. So, but still, there's a little bit of theory here, and then we'll follow up with Mathieu on the practice. Okay, so I'll tell you a little bit about me, then we'll talk about what design is in the first place. Everybody thinks they know what design is, but I just want to make sure we have the same thing in mind when we talk about it. Some reasons to invest in it, why should you even go through the next steps in the first place, and then the practical part about what you can do as a founder to actually help your company be more user-centric and design-centric. Okay, so as I mentioned, I'm actually Russian, but I spent most of my time or most of my life in the United States. 7 years, the last 7 years were in the Bay Area and Silicon Valley, where I worked with fast growth companies and early stage startups. I essentially helped them build their design function and build their products early on. And 2.5 years ago, I moved to Paris, where I've been at Algolia, helping scale the design and product team there. So it's been a fun adventure. So that's about it. All right, so design. What is design? So first, let's start by looking at a few of these logos, and they have one thing in common. And that's that they were founded by designers or they had designers really early on in their team. And I'm sure most of you looking here, if you're building a company, would love to be the Airbnb of something one day or the Uber of something. Uber isn't here because I don't, it's Uber. But still, they're pretty awesome on the design side. Anyway, they're inspirational and aspirational companies, and design had something to do with it. They really set standards for whole industries. So this is how most people view design. They think that these are people that make beautiful things, they make magic happen, that's a quote. They come and take bad technical stuff and make them user-friendly or whatever that means. But this is how product designers usually view themselves. So they view themselves as problem solvers. People who try to understand the user, the person for whom they're building the product, then create the architecture for it, collaborate around it, and then the interface happens. So interface is actually 20% of the work, I would say. 80% is the problem solving. And a famous quote by Louis Sullivan is form follows function. That's kind of the whole idea behind design, is that design is there to solve problems, and aesthetics, while extremely important and valuable, is not the fundamental part of design. So are we all aligned here on what design is? It's not just pretty stuff? Okay. So here is an example of form and function. Oh, come on, guys, that's the bad pun. Form, function? No, okay. So it's a quick example on why form and function are both important. So you see the form used to look like this, and now it looks like this. So the designer obviously improved the user experience by removing about 12 input fields to make it much easier for the user to make a donation. How much more likely is the user to make a donation using this form versus that form? So that's user experience, right? That's really, really important. But they also improved the visual aesthetic of the product, and that builds trust. That helps you identify with the brand more, that makes you feel like, hey, they're not gonna rob me if I give them the money. They might be something serious. So that's why aesthetics also matters. Okay. So why should you invest in design, besides the fact that I just outlined, it actually improves the experience and makes your brand trustworthy, more consistent, relatable, whatever you want it to be. It gives it personality, et cetera, et cetera. Just good design is good business, and that's coming from IBM. So 71% of companies said their design teams impacted customer satisfaction in a positive way. Here are some complex charts just to tell you that customer engagement, satisfaction, and revenues improve with investment in design. And this comes from real studies. I didn't make this up. So McKinsey has a whole research arm that does a lot of research on design and impact of design. And they actually found that companies who are public, who are in the top quartile of design investment, outperform all the other companies by about 200%. So they are wildly successful compared to companies that don't invest as much in design. And here is a very small unreadable chart from Envision's study on design maturity. So they've outlined their companies on scale of 1 through 5 of design maturity, 1 being pixel pushers, people that only are invited to make things pretty. And then the level 5 companies is where the designers are strategic partners within the business. So you can see that companies with level 5 design maturity actually have valuations that are 26% higher than those of companies at design 1 maturity. So if you're starting a company and you're already thinking about your exit, that's a pretty cool figure. So a really quick disclaimer here. You know, design is not just designer's job. Everyone in a company essentially is a designer because everybody needs to be user-focused. And in a lot of times when people say it's a design-led company or design thinking company, they actually mean they just really listen to the user well and align with the user's needs very well. So a lot of the conversation today is going to be about understanding the user and how you can meet their needs better. This is a really long slide about what defines a design invested company, but basically the gist here is that the company is fully bought into the value of design and they understand it both from the aesthetic perspective and the functional perspective, and they follow the design thinking process, and they think that it's a valid investment. So, product designers and companies typically champion the practice of design thinking within their organizations. I'll spend 2 seconds on what design thinking is for those that may not be familiar with it, and then we'll actually get to the fun part. So, design thinking is a human-centered approach to innovation that draws from the designer's toolkit to integrate the needs of people, possibilities of technologies, and requirements for business success. So basically, the heart is where you want to be, and it's viability, desirability, and feasibility. And all those circles represent technical, user, and business needs. Pretty simple, but pretty hard to achieve. All right, so what can you as a founder do? This is really addressed to founders, but you know, if you're an early employee at an early stage startup, this can apply to you too. What can you do to actually cultivate a culture of design centricity, of design thinking, user centricity? How can you create that nugget of Airbnb in your world? So there are 5 main suggestions that I'm going to give you. The first one is set the tones. This is really for the founders. Design culture starts at the top. So first thing you can do is educate yourself on design thinking. If you don't know what it is, if you haven't seen the frameworks, just go and Google it. You'll find plenty of really great videos on the topic. Practice what you preach. So once you've educated yourself on it, go and practice it. Go talk to users, try to understand their needs and their pain points. Really get to know them and invite others in your company to do it too. Don't be user number 1. Okay, this is a real story. I was interviewing a designer the other day, and I was asking her, how do you validate your design decisions, your designs? And she said, oh, well, we usually take it to the CEO, and then if he gives the green light, we go and build it. And I said, okay, so when do you actually show this to the users? And they said, well, after it's built and shipped. And I said, well, why do you do that? That's really interesting. That's a very unusual process. And she said, quote, it's because our CEO says that he is the user number 1. And incidentally, I actually use this product that they're building, and it's not a great product. I think there's only one happy user of this product, and I'm going to let you guess who that person is. So don't be that CEO. Okay, number 2 is bring empathy. It's really, really, really closely tied to the previous points I made. So empower someone with a seat at the table to be your primary user advocate. Now, in companies like CEO, Airbnb, it's a chief design officer, and some other companies, it's a chief product officer. The title doesn't really matter. What matters is the goal. The goal is that you have someone who really understands the users, really understands how to build products for users, how to validate them with them, and can advocate actively on their behalf at the table. What does it mean to have someone at the table, you might ask? It's like when you sit in a meeting room and make big decisions about the company's strategy, that's the table. So you want to have someone who represents users at that table. It can be even someone from marketing. Measure your user satisfaction with your product. Now, this is a tricky point because a lot of you say, oh, great, I already do that. I have Amplitude installed on my product. I measured like the engagement rate, the click-through rates, everything. That's really, really great. Quantitative measures are really important, and they can tell us what your users do with your product, how they interact with it, but then don't tell you the why. So always make sure to supplement your quantitative data with some qualitative measures and user experience metrics. If you don't know what those are, you can Google that as well, and there will be plenty of articles on how to measure the UX of your products. So supplement the quantitative with customer success metrics. And NPS is not a customer success metric. It is in a way, but it's not a user experience metric. So just FYI. Make sure non-customer facing folks are hearing about and from customers. So this is actually not only important for your company culture and design thinking inside the company, but it's actually important for your employee satisfaction and retention. Studies show that customers or companies where employees hear about customer stories or from customers directly at least once a week are much more likely to stay at the company and much more likely to be engaged in their work. So this can be shown in many forms. You can, during your all hands meetings, or I don't know, if you're 4 people, when you talk about, when you have your company meeting, show real users using your product, or have everyone do support tasks so they interact with customers. Put quotes around your office from your customers, but make that connection between your product and the users tangible and real, because it will not only build empathy, but again, it will make people working with you much happier. And really get to know the users. So I know you're probably thinking, well, I talk to my users at least once a week, and I sit down and I show them a product, and I show them the demo, and I walk them through, and then I ask, what do you think? That's not getting to know your users. Getting to know your users is actually listening. So giving them your product to use, or talking about their needs and listening, and getting beyond the what into the why. So if you, for example, have an assumption about a customer need, but you can answer what the need is, but you can't answer the why, then it probably means you need to go and talk to them more. It probably means you need to ask more questions. And dog food your product. Now this kind of is in contradiction with like don't be the user, but actually dog fooding the product helps build empathy, and it also helps understand where the key pain points should be. Dog fooding means trying it out yourself, using it yourself in similar contexts. You just have to be aware of the fact that you're still biased, you're still not the user, even though you can create pretty good assumptions about where improvements could be made. And so then you can go and validate them with the users. 3, encourage collaboration. This is going to be pretty quick and easy. There's been a lot of experimentation in Silicon Valley about how teams work together, and some of the best performing teams are cross-functional and diverse. So make sure that if you have a designer on staff, if you're filling the role of a designer, that you're not sitting in a corner working on wireframes, but you're actually collaborating with designers, with technologists, and with business folks, and others, researchers, marketers, whatever functions you have at your company. And make design quality everyone's job. So it's not just up to the designer to make sure that the final product looks good. Make sure the developers are just bought into design quality as the designers and everyone else is. You can do that through process with pre-launch and plum reviews. That's a really simple one. Everyone QAs the product, or dog fooding again. Make sure everyone's involved in it. Move quickly. So McKinsey says that companies that are most successful and most design-driven actually move very quickly. They ship quickly, they ship often, and they ship imperfect things, because when you ship, you get extra data points. So when do decisions become hard about products? When do people get stuck under product direction? It's usually when they don't have enough data or enough data points. So anytime you feel stuck, you need to get more input, more data points, and shipping quickly is that opportunity to get the feedback, to start the feedback loop going. So ship quickly, embrace failure, because that's, again, another data point, and avoid perfection. So I'll show you an example, a reminder of what Airbnb looked like when they launched and what they look like now. If they tried to reach perfection, they probably would never get past 2007 or maybe 2008. They would still be there thinking about what perfect is. But as you can see, they reach near perfection over 10 years and a lot of design improvements and a lot of iteration. So don't go for perfect, go for what works and learn from it. And hire right. So hiring a designer is a whole new topic, and I did a webinar on this for the family, so go listen to it. But try to get a designer on your team early. Designers are really where the rubber hits the road. They make solutions come alive. They make ideas come alive. That's why this function is so important. They make abstract things concrete. So if you hire a designer who's really knowledgeable about human cognition, human philosophy, psychology, how people process information, process data, whatever your product needs are, they could be a really, really valuable asset to your team. Hire generalists. So if you're going to hire a designer, make sure it's someone who can walk your company through the entire design process from end to finish. They don't have to be perfect at each step, but they need to be able to get you from point A to point B, or Z, I guess. And focus on skills rather than coverage. So while designers are great, also think about what your team strengths are and where your weaknesses are, and try to plug those holes with that design hire. So if you have an amazing product sense, you're a founder, you're really a product person, business person, then maybe your designer doesn't have to be quite as strong in it. Evaluate your entire company, your small team as a whole. So here are the 5 steps. Set the tone, bring empathy, encourage collaboration, move quickly, and hire right. That's pretty easy, right? And I'll leave you with this quote from the founder, or president, CEO of IDEO. For those who don't know, IDEO is a leading design thinking firm out of Silicon Valley. Thinking about design is hard, but not thinking about it can be disastrous. So go out and build your design culture.
Que la famille